It's nighttime, but I'm thinking about things that are important to know about our world and the so-called government. Where did it come from? Isn't it curious that while we have the United States of America, which is a democratic republic, and then we have other nations, and we have so-called empires, which are not official and formalized, but you've got the West, Western civilization. And then you've got these other entities like NATO, and especially the UN, UN, standing for the United Nations. What is their body of laws? What is their charter? What is the document that they're founded on? Just as you would ask with the United States of America, the USA has Articles of Confederation, it has Declaration of Independence, Constitution, Bill of Rights, amendments. Then there's a whole slew of legislation that comes after that, either written by the legislative branch known as the Congress and approved by majority. There are different procedures, and approved by the president as the executive branch, or vetoed. However, executive orders can come from the executive branch, and those may in turn be vetoed. So there's checks and balances, and if there's any dispute, it will go to the judiciary, the Supreme Court, made up of 9 justices. So that's a little bit about the structure, but think about how these entities, legal entities, are governmental bodies. Think about how that they got created and what they are today, many years and decades later. Are they the same thing that it's stated on paper? I could ask the same question about communism. It's supposed to come from the book, which is written by Karl Marx, right? Communist Manifesto, Das Kapital. It was written in German, if I believe correctly, if I remember. They translated it, of course, but the original, the language of Karl Marx, is German. Didn't exactly get applied to the German people. It was first applied in the Soviet Union, the Russian-speaking people, and then in China, under Mao, the Chinese-speaking people. So we have to ask this very important fundamental question. We look at the world today of 2014, presently, currently. Are these groups of people, these bodies, these entities, these governmental authorities, are they the same thing that was started out on paper by their founders so many years ago? And with the United States of America, how many years is that? About almost 250 years? When it was all written down and codified. It was based on earlier writings, though. A lot of influences, even from the Iroquois Confederacy, of the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. There were influences from Roger Williams. There was influences from Thomas Paine, Common Sense. There was influences by Patrick Henry, even Paul Revere, the Pilgrims. So going way back, there's this whole idea of what's America's purpose, what's its structure going to be, how will it become founded and codified. But once they get that down on paper, what then happens? It's interesting, I heard a bunch of patriots talking, and not that I'm saying I'm a patriot or I'm not a patriot. don't think that's the issue. I don't think it matters. I'm just going over the ideas. They are patriotic ideas. They are philosophical, governmental, social, psychological, sociological. But these patriots were talking recently, and they had some very interesting questions and discussion on the matter of the Constitution. And they brought out the principle that the definition and the instructions of how to create the federal government, the central government, was to make certain that its powers were limited. And it was an interface with the external, with foreign nations. So you need a central government to make dealings with that, but you also need the central government for what? A national money. It's going to regulate the business dealings, the merchants, because it's their money, right? Some people will argue that it's the people's money. However, if you read the Bible and what Jesus said, it's not really the money of the people. If you think it's your money, then you're paying heed to Caesar. Caesar is no different than Washington now. So they had said this in relation to the fact that the United States would be composed of multiple states. We ended up with 50, and so far that hasn't changed. They're staying with the glorious number of 50. But each one of those, and from the beginning they counted 13, supposedly, but whatever number, it increased over time, and every time the state was added, every time you have an instance of ratifying and being accepted into the United States, these states have unlimited powers of themselves. So when you're in a state, that state has all kinds of authority, supposedly, over the lands. And that's what the Constitution says. And their power on their land actually supersedes the power of any federal central government intervention or interaction with it. It supersedes it. But is that what we see in the country today, in the nation? Who's actually calling the shots? It seems like whatever was written on the paper, this United States central government, the federal entity, has gone so far beyond that it's almost like the opposite of what it was supposed to be. It seems like it has no limitation whatsoever. It seems like the power has become so all-consuming and corrupt that they don't feel they have a limit. They feel like they're infinite. They feel like they're the all-powerful authority. Is that what's reality? Totally different from what's on paper and idealized and planned and the details? Is it the dead letter? Look up that phrase, the dead letter. Because the dead letter is not a real law. It's just a memory. It's just a faded, distorted, dissolved version of itself. Now, I've talked for 10 minutes, and I hope that you've agreed with something, and or you've learned something, because I just noticed that one of my collars was out and the other one wasn't. Does that mean something? Left wing, right wing, bicameral, two parties. That's a whole other can of worms we're not going to get into right now. If you search, you'll find out what I've already said about that subject. But we, as a people of the world, we as a nation, we have a responsibility. Every citizen, every member of this entity, if you are born on this land, if you belong on this land, you have to awaken to these politics. And only in that way are we all going to agree what this is about and what our law is. Because this experiment is not done yet. It's just in the middle of being determined. We have only begun to fight. I'll have more to say about this, but that's all for now. See you in the next one.